Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
What's something your therapist said that was life-changing? The anxiety you're feeling is not evil or your enemy, it's an overprotective friend trying to keep you safe because it once saw you hurt. Do not fight it, prove it wrong. My therapist always told me I'd have been the best back in caveman days. I'd be the one always looking out for danger and keeping the family safe. My mom and I both have trouble sleeping until early in the morning, and she always jokes that we're the night watch around the prehistoric fire. Not every friend has to be a close friend. You're able to have different kinds of friends, like levels of how close they are or how much you confide in them. I struggle with being a loner, and it affected my mental health a lot because I could count my friends on one hand. I thought of people as acquaintances or close friends with no gray area. This advice helped me appreciate more of the people who I'm not super close with, but they still have a presence in my life. I love the saying, people come into your life for either a reason, a season, or for life. You just have to accept it. As a teen in therapy, I used to call myself a potato because of my ugly appearance. The woman I had sessions with actually gave me a small plastic potato replica and had written on it in Sharpie, "Some people like potatoes." I think it was just the effort she went to trying to help me, cheer me up, that really affected me in my judgment of professional help. I was an angsty kid, and after that I took getting help much more seriously. As a gardener, I fucking love digging up potatoes. Like a kid on Christmas morning opening up presents. Some people love potatoes. Hope you feel better about yourself these days, but if you're still calling yourself a potato, potatoes are fantastic. I asked him, how do you process all of the negative feelings that are projected at you? And he said, they aren't my feelings. I don't think he realized how profound that was. I feel this. You can hurl 100 insults at me and the only one that will hurt is the one I believe. This reminds me of the Buddha and the Angry Man parable, which has had an impact on me. Thanks for reminding me. The parable's something like, one day Buddha was walking through a village. A very angry and rude young man came up and began insulting him. "You have no right teaching others," he shouted. "You are as stupid as everyone else. You are nothing but a fake." Buddha was not upset by these insults. Instead he asked the young man, "Tell me, if you buy a gift for someone, and that person does not take it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man was surprised to be asked such a strange question and answered, "It would belong to me, because I bought the gift." The Buddha smiled and said, "That is correct. And it is exactly the same with your anger. If you become angry with me and I do not get insulted, then the anger falls back on you. You are then the only one who becomes unhappy, not me. All you have done is hurt yourself. What other people think about you is none of your business." Same vibe. Change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. Quote. Similar to this, I had read a quote, and the day came when the ordeal of remaining tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Quote. The way your parents died will never be the most interesting thing about you. It's not even the most interesting thing about them. Quote. My parents died by suicide together, and I was worried that it was going to consume me as an individual. I didn't want the deaths or my grief to become my entire identity. My brother was worried he was doomed to repeat what my parents did. What was the point of fighting it? His therapist told him, "You are the culmination of millennia of genes and family experiences. You could take over the story of a relative who was hardy, resilient, brave. Your parents are not the only people you are related to." Quote. Edit. Thanks for all the support, and glad my therapist's words help others as much as they help me. I'm doing great and my life is wonderful. As my therapist assured me, I have much more interesting things in my life. Talking freely about my parents in this way on Reddit and IRL, the good and bad stories, have been integral to my grief process, which will never end. I'm not trying to self-promote or anything weird, but I did drain armor about my experience, which was healing in a way. I also recommend the Suicide Bereavement sub if you've lost someone to suicide and are feeling like you'll never be able to relate to anyone. One of my teachers talking about evolution one day told us we were all descended in a direct line from the first life on the planet, which passed through all kinds of transformations and weathered every extinction event and every daily struggle, since life began. There were plenty of dead ends that trapped others, and plenty that didn't make it, but we are the survivors, all of us. Some people are like a colander. It doesn't matter how much time, love and support you pour into them, it will never fill them up enough to make a difference. I once heard a similar expression about some people not being able to metabolize attention, or affection, or etc., which is why they will always feel ignored or insecure no matter how much you give them, and it really helped me let go of feeling like it was my responsibility to convince them that I cared. Don't live as though the thing you fear has happened when it hasn't. Damn, what do you do when the thing you did fear happened and was as horrible as you expected it would be? It's over now. When my wife's cousin found out his mom was dying of cancer, he had a revelation. His whole life he'd been worried about losing her, about what he would do when she was gone. And now that she was dying, as horrible as it was, he realized he could let go of that fear, because it was holding him back. Letting go of fear doesn't mean things are all peaches and cream. Sometimes it just means you decided not to let that fear rule your life. Therapy, coping mechanisms, leaning into your support systems, trying a new hobby. Going outside in a quiet place to breathe. You have to accept it did happen, make sure you understand it's not your fault. Give yourself lots of grace. If there was a lesson to learn, learn it, but don't let it control your life. A lot easier said than done. If you don't want to share a lot, I understand, but was it a physical thing like a car accident or assault, or was it emotional, like a breakup or someone cutting you off or similar? Or you can DM me smiling face. I was sad and have PTSD from it. I buried for 10 years and have finally started working on it, lots and lots of therapy and inner work, and it's damn hard. I was discussing with my therapist that although I'm still young, I felt like it was too late to achieve what I wanted my life to be. She very seriously looked me in the eye and said, "Are you dead?" Well, no, then there's time, and it's a motto I've been reminding myself of daily. I'm 45 and struggling with this. I'm too old to be young but too young to be old. Thank you for posting this. Go look up how old Alan Rickman was before he acted in Die Hard. 42. That was the movie that broke him into the mainstream. Sam Jack had a similar trajectory. Numerous writers and other creative types didn't decide to start until middle age. Until you're dead you can always try. Sure, it'll be harder to take time to become a doctor or the like, but it's not impossible. Edit. Loving all the supportive comments point out other folks who found huge success later in life. You aren't that interesting. I would have panic attacks and paranoia that people were out to get me, PTSD etc., and would think that people were judging me in grocery stores because my toddler was crying or that my hair was messy. And honestly it boiled down to, nobody cares. We're all trying to survive and get through the day, and what someone looks like or does, we observe and move on. Nobody is that interesting. Nobody, for the most part, is going to remember to toddler crying for a brief moment or the way I was dressed or if my makeup was perfect. Nobody. The only person who will remember is me, and how I made myself feel. As someone who worked in a grocery store for 5 years, we know the worn-out parent look and definitely don't judge you, kids are hard. Also former grocery store employee, I wasn't judging you, I was distracted fake scanning things or keying in coupon codes so I could get your grocery bill lower. Cold sweat smile. Most of us are just trying to find ways to help each other out a little. You wouldn't worry so much about what others think of you if you realized how seldom they do. Honestly, most of us are also in our own heads that the very people you think are judging you are probably too worried about you judging them to actually think about you at all. We're all anxious, self-conscious messes. My shrink said something similar that helped me. Basically, I'm not special. My anxiety and OCD, presented with very troubling mental images, were textbook. I had avoided mental health treatment because I thought my thoughts were appalling and I'd be locked up for life. Turns out I'm just like all the other OCD-riddled anxiety balls out there. It made me feel better. Of course, that may make all of you nervo AF that we are just out here, looking like everyone else. I had a similar experience the first time I went to my DR for anxiety and asked him if he had ever seen anything like this. He looked at me with a semi-smile and said, "It's about 1/3 of my practice." I felt a little better after hearing that. I honestly thought my brain was broken and I would inevitably be committed. Me, I just want to get back to my baseline and feel okay again. Therapist, or potentially feel even better than your baseline. Very eye-opening for me in the moment because the thought had never occurred to me. As someone who's doing so much better than I have ever in my life, I didn't know I could do this well emotionally. I used to think I had good days, but compared the times I'm having now, those days were still deep in the shadows of depression. Edit. Welp, I got fired today. I feel like I should be sad or distraught, but I'm not. I'm able to cope and understand it's not the end of the world, and I have a strong enough support network that it's all gonna be okay. I wish I could explain how encouraging this is to read. Thank you so much for sharing, and I am glad you are doing so well. Unimaginably hopeful to hear stories like this. Heart. Just because the mentally ill person screaming at you lives in your home instead of on the streets doesn't mean their opinion is any more true. The fact that the relationships you have with some people are involuntary doesn't mean you should hold them to a lower standard than voluntary relationships. You can hold them to a higher standard. The mentally ill person screaming at me doesn't just live in my home, it lives in my head, and I always have to remind myself that what they are saying isn't true. I had been in therapy for about a decade, and was talking to her about online dating. I said it was like being sucked into a whirlpool, in that there is only one small step between just playing around the edges and being sucked into the thing. She asked me why I used that example, and I said, because, when I was 9, I was sucked into a whirlpool in a creek, and only survived because my brother managed to pull me out. This started a flurry of scribbling in her notebook I had not seen before. Also answered lots of things. The scribbling, I really wish to read what my therapist writes about me. My former therapist took a ton of notes. My current one has never written anything during a session, but somehow always remembers what we'd been talking about and picks it back up immediately. I have no idea how she does it.